are dealing with the entire Outer Continental Shelf divided into 3 mile squares, and each number on each square is going to be for lease in certain areas. States like California have a 3 mile state waters. Florida has 9. But here in California, we're dealing with different levels of comment periods, some of which you're familiar with. And if you look at the 5 year program, it kind of jumps out at you that the entire Atlantic coast is not included, which has to do, I think, with both defense space use conflicts around Hampton Roads, the Carrier Battle Group there, and also the chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee and also Lindsey Graham. The people with great influence on the President of the United States have gotten the entire Atlantic coast taken out. That will be important, I think, going forward from the standpoint of legal considerations, because it makes California kind of stick out like a sore thumb with 6 lease sales in the next 5 years and nothing off of Oregon and Washington. And this is where I am focused. I am focused on local communities who have, in the past, I worked for from 1980 through 1994, who created something called the Local Government Coordination Program to enhance the ability of local governments to participate in a 5 year leasing program that was promulgated by a former Interior Secretary named James Watt. And this time we're dealing with a very fast-moving set of trains, because within the National OCS program, they've decided that they can actually start planning for lease sales 30 days before the national program's finalized, which I've never heard of. They're kind of telescoping time-wise what's going on with the comment periods. We're going to be dealing today with the national program and the individual lease sales. But for local governments, the OCS Lands Act amendments of 78, there must have been some members of Congress who developed these who came from local government, because they actually set up specific procedures for local government input in the program itself. Although it doesn't grant them direct leasing authority, it does create a public process for submitting proposed leasing programs to governors in affected coastal states. It has to, Interior has to accept local government recommendations regarding the size, timing, location of these lease sales, keywords being size, timing, and location, and respond in a meaningful way when the governor or the governor on behalf of local governments submits comments. The Interior Department, under the law, really has to submit substantive responses. So most of the resolutions that we have adopted on the behalf of local governments start out with the word Interior has failed to. In other words, various things. So you got to balance national and local interests. You're supposed to, share the information with governors. And so to date, on the 5 year leasing program comment period that terminated in January, this is the programmatic comments. Every county or supervisor, at least 2 supervisors on behalf of every county on the coast of California, with the exception of Del Norte County. Orange County was the 2 supervisors. Everybody else did either a resolution or a letter, has commented opposing the 5 year leasing program. And we actually have about a dozen cities now. This slide needs to be updated, but we're dealing with a narrow outer continental shelf in the north, where just beyond, this is a map from lease sale 53 in the 1980s, yellow being high interest, green being medium interest, blue being some interest. And as you can see, and then up here off of Point Arena and down here off of Bodega, the crosshatched areas that are rectangular are where they were actually going to lease in the mid 1980s. And then around Point Reyes, there's a circular area which predated the Farallones National Marine Sanctuary. It was called the Point Reyes Exclusion Zone. So there's a long history of not allowing drilling around Point Reyes. This grew into, I get blamed for part of this, but This grew into a constellation of national marine sanctuaries, starting with the Farallon Sanctuary around Point Reyes. You'll recognize that curve shape I showed you before, infilled with Cornell Bank Sanctuary, and then extended northward up to Point Arena, the Greater Farallon National Marine Sanctuary. And finally, Leon Panetta got tired of waiting for 14 years for NOAA to create the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. So he did it on the Hurricane Andrew Relief Act in 1994. A bunch of building inspectors in Florida had become uh, basically contractors. Contractors and building inspectors became the same people in Florida. They built a lot of mobile homes and temporary dwellings in Florida, and Hurricane Andrew came through and piled all of those buildings up against the interstate. And it was the most expensive state bailout in history. And so Leon called me up at 3 in the morning one night. I had an apartment in Washington, in an office at the time, and he said, "Get over here." Here being the Cannon House office building. So I showed up in flip-flops, Bermuda shorts, and a pajama top. And he said, "Draw me the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary." And I said, "Which one?" And he said, "The big one that you've been asking for, that I told you you could never get, because I'm going to get it at 8:30 in the morning." And so I drew it with a felt pen on using my arm as a compass, and it became the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary by 8:30 the next morning. Uh, we have been introducing people who are coming back to this issue to OCS Lease Sale 53. There was an environmental impact statement. A draft is available from Amazon for, I think, $65, believe it or not, a reprint. And I haven't been able to find the final on Amazon, but this is the Central and Northern California lease sale that was supposed to occur in the 1980s. It wound up not occurring because of the introduction of the first congressional OCS moratorium, where we actually, with Leon's help and a gentleman named Sid Yates from Chicago, who chaired the House Subcommittee on Interior Appropriations at the time, we cut off Watt's money to actually do this lease sale. But these are some of the maps from that lease sale. Now, these are based on seismic airgun surveys done in the 1960s. So it is 2D seismic, two-dimensional seismic, not 3D seismic. But that you can generally get the idea that oil does not move. These were the areas that the oil industry wanted to lease at that time off of what's called the Eel River Basin off of Humboldt Bay, the Point Arena Basin off of Mendocino County. This, unfortunately, is in front of my house. This is the Bodega Basin in Sonoma County. And as you zoom in on these, they all tend to hug the shoreline. Narrow Outer Continental Shelf, basically oil interest being right up against the 3 Mile state tidelands. This obviously became quite controversial and led to the beginning of what lasted 27 years, an OCS moratorium in Congress, often passing by a single vote in the House Appropriations Committee, in which Congress simply would not fund leasing in these areas. And actually, both Bush brothers supported that moratorium. And when, of course, we saw Trump come, and we didn't need it during, Obama or Clinton, but when Trump came in the first time, he made it all disappear. It basically ended at the end of the second Bush administration, the moratorium. But we know where they want to drill because oil doesn't move around. And so these maps you're seeing for the first time, this is basically the area I would say they're most likely to try to lease is off of Santa Barbara and off of San Luis Obispo County. This is called the Santa Maria Basin. Well, there is a problem here, as you can see, because these interface with very important commercial fishing grounds. They're right up against coastal assets that are important to the people of California. And so this takes us to today, where local governments have reconvened the local government coordination program. And I got a call a year ago saying, "We want you to come back." And I said, I'm you do realize that I'm basically retired. And they said, yeah, but you're the only one that knows all this stuff. So I came back and we are walking pretty successfully, I think, the cities and counties of the coast through this three-layer comment period that you've been commenting on. And where we are, of course, right now, we're waiting any day now for the second analysis and proposal of proposed program, which will start a 90-day comment period. And during that 90-day period, it looks like they are going to concurrently do the state CZMA review. So this would be, we aren't sure. They don't tell us what they're going to do until 2 days before it appears in the Federal Register. But the State Coastal Zone Management Act review, which is the Coastal Commission, that may provide the only public hearing in this 5-year leasing plan. Along with that, they're of course doing a programmatic EIS, which is going to cover supposedly the activities occurring in all 6 of the California lease sales. If you study some of the programmatic EISs that are done for the Gulf of Mexico, they tend to be very thin documents, not very, revealing of what the impacts might be. And so we're kind of dealing with this programmatic comments, a call for information and nominations, which we've all commented on for Central and Southern California, which I don't know quite how the oil industry is going to respond or did respond to the call for information and nominations because they can submit proprietary comments by mail in that, but they don't have 3D seismic. And 3D seismic is essential to build a AI model of the California coast, showing where all the geologic interests might be. I've toured the data center in Houston, serving on the Department of Energy Methane Hydrates Advisory Committee for 3 presidents. They actually let me in. I got to tour the data center where all of the information about all of the oil on the planet is secretly held in this huge server farm, and it is mirrored inside a giant rock mountain in Colorado, in case anything happens to the one in Houston, which has its own power plant. And they don't have this kind of information for California. So one thing we're watching for is not on this chart, but we would not be surprised, but we would be alarmed if there is a application for seismic airgun surveys to gather 3D seismic off of all of California. One or more. I mean, it could be a speculative survey in which a survey ship then comes and gathers data and sells it to different oil companies in a proprietary, profitable way. Or it could be different surveys for different companies. We could have repetitive seismic airgun surveys. So that is the other, in addition to the 3 tracks we're following now, we could see that. And meanwhile, we could go, in order to convince the public that offshore drilling doesn't hurt anything, the so-called God Squad, various secretaries, exempted the Rice's whale in the Gulf of Mexico from the Endangered Species Act, as you probably know. And we're not sure what that means. I've seen some accounts in terms of what it means for California. I've seen some accounts saying it could be applied to California. My concern would be that going forward, when they move to California with leases, we know where some of the interest is. In fact, it's off of Big Sur, off of Bixby Canyon Bridge, right where the sea otters hang out. So the God Squad, I don't want to give them any idea, but they could be looking at accepting the sea otter from ESA, which would be of grave concern to anyone having a legal concern. And then there's an internal reconfiguring by Interior of NEPA, which for the first time related to platform Gilda, which they're trying to allow fracking off an existing platform off of Ventura County. They tried their first 10-day comment period. We complained loudly about that, and they're trying to ensure, as of last week, they're trying to eliminate the oversight body, Bessie, that's charged with ensuring safe operations. So what we're trying to do is in January 2025, there was what is called Section 12A of the OCS Lands Act. Joe Biden took everything off the table on the whole Pacific Coast permanently with executive order. So this is called the Biden OCS withdrawals. You know better than I that there are at least two illegal actions going on that. The one in Louisiana isn't going our way. I don't know about the other one lately. We're trying to not have anything in California included in the 5-year OCS program, and we're building a strong unified legal record in which every county on the coast, along with the state and the state of California and the state of Oregon and the state of Washington, all have standing going forward, so that 3 to 5 years from now or whenever a judge turns around and says, well, where were you back in 2026? You didn't comment. We can say, actually, we did. So we're making sure that the local governments are in the game when the lawsuits start to happen. Because frankly, as you can see from the current administration and how unresponsive they are to public comment, it is almost certain that the coast of California, the fate of the coast of California, will be decided by two things: one, litigation over the program, and then a series of 27 existing onshore facilities ordinances in which, during the late 1980s, counties and cities along the coast of California either banned outright or required to be put to a vote of the people any onshore facility for offshore drilling. This is called, generally, we call it the blue wall. And the idea being that if you can't come ashore and build a staging area to start your activity offshore, or you can't come ashore and if you find oil or gas, you can't bring it to shore for pipelining or processing. We believe that has a chilling effect on potential bidders. And these onshore ordinances were challenged at the time in court by the Western Oil and Gas Association, I believe now called the Western States Petroleum Association, or vice versa, and they actually stood up. The judge ruled at the time not only were they not right, but they weren't. The legal challenge on the part of the industry was that we were interfering with the Commerce Clause of the Constitution, the transfer of vital material across the coastline. And so there is some legal, you know, precedent here that is helpful for you to understand. Uh, that's where we are today.